I am Chester Dunham, and this is the Dunham Report, a marketplace of information for labor, civil rights, and other issues of social justice. I am Dunham, and I'm the host of the show, and my co-host is none other than Mr. Wesley Crenshaw. And tonight we got on with us my previous co-host, none other than Mr. Grover Thornton. And as you know, last week, the last show, your viewing audience, we were talking about history, black history, and some other history period. And so tonight we're gonna continue conversation talking about history, because since it's the month they give us as a Black History Month, because we deal with Black history and history every day, because we are involved in history period. We are involved in, you name any type of history or whatever, minority or blacks are involved. So what we plan to do tonight is to share some information with you all about individuals who had contributed so much right here in Savannah, Georgia, in this city where we live. So again, Mr. Thornton.
Yes.
Glad to have you on with us.
Glad to be on, sir.
And your partner over there, Mr. Crenshaw, he might want to tell you something, but we're going to get the show on the road in a few minutes. So definitely we talk about a great deal of things, and some things that you want to enlighten the viewing audience on some things, and also Mr. Crenshaw. And we may go into a few other things, but still yet, I just want the viewing audience to know.
The difference on Black history.
Talking about. Yes.
Well, I'd like to start off by saying,
anything you want to say?
I want to reiterate something, but I'll come back.
You go ahead, and I come in.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to reiterate this information that I was talking about. The shutdown that's going on today that deals with the immigration policy, this is nothing new for us. That I'm trying to say that the reason why we had such fighting in the South after the Civil War was how many votes a black person would have. Let's say a quarter of a vote, a half a vote. So what I'm trying to say is that the same problem they had back then, they have it now. They're concerned about too many black people being in the country. They cannot vote the white race. It's the same reason we're doing right now on the southern border. How many people are coming across the border, and who are they going to vote for? So we got the same immigration problem we had during slavery. We got them now. You just got to think that's what.
You just want to talk about it, but that's what it is.
That's exactly what it is.
You know, I'd like to say that first thing about black history. Everything has to have an inception, how it started. It started by Mr. Carter G. Woodson, who was professor of history at Howard University. And it started with Black History Week. And then when it went to a month, then now it began to really spread. And I read an article, some people were saying, another school of thought, that we don't need that anymore. How ridiculous that is, because our young people need to learn about their history. And one thing about the Jewish children, before they be bar mitzvah, they have to learn all about their prophets and their straight way of life, all about the Holocaust, and all about Moses bringing them out from the land of Egypt, and with the help of Almighty God. So we need to understand our history. And I was reading this article, I started to tell you on the last element that was in the AARP, which is a magazine that the Association for Retired Persons. And here it is about Black History Week. And she was saying, the gentleman in this article was saying how it's important that grandparents educate their children, their grandchildren about the struggle that we as a people had to overcome, because we need to know that. Now, when we went to school, we only saw two black people in the book. That was Booker T. Washington and George Washington Carver. Now, the reason why they praised Mr. Carver because he was such a genius with agriculture. He saved the South from farming going bad. In fact, I was surprised. I went to Tuskegee, and I went to visited his lab, and I was surprised to find out that they have a bust of him in the 60s, all that, in the National Archives of Alabama, because they honored him for that. He saved the farmers with all his genius. So we know the story of Booker T. Washington. I have my, he did a great job with education. But he only thought that black folk would only do everything with their hands. But we got a mind too. You don't think so? Who developed the blood bank? If you're listening to me, if you've had anybody had operation, the black man, Mr. Drew,
Yep.
Dr. Charles Drew, he invented the blood bank.
Yep.
The blood bank.
Yes,
That's right, Charles Drew.
He allowed to save a lot of American lives.
Especially during World War II because they had to have blood plasma.
Mm-hmm.
So color has nothing to do with a person's ability.
And his death was that he was denied a certain privilege going into a hospital. Or something.
I didn't know that. Yeah, I heard that. He was in a car accident, and because of his color. Jesse, I've heard that. I can't substantiate that.
Yeah, that's a fact.
That he was denied service or something because of his race, because of color. But now
that's
people who, from the servicemen, and you have people who have had surgery, the blood bank. Mm-hmm. Now, I asked the lady at the Red Cross, I got to go check it out. Y'all got a picture of Dr. Drew hanging up in the air? We have. I'm going to check it out for myself. But here's the thing I'm saying, that color has nothing to do with one's ability.
Mm-mm.
One's ability. Like when I was reading the book of Brown versus Board Education, at Thurgood March, I said, well, if the trouble about sitting by white kids on the bus, black kids sitting by white kids on the bus, they take the seats out the bus. I'll put the small black children with the small white children, put the dumb black children with the dumb white children. If you want that way, but all children have the ability to they should succeed as much as they can, their potential to succeed.
I think one of the things that many people are unaware of is that they don't know that a black man invited the cotton gin.
Yeah, the cotton gin, yeah.
And those are the sort of things that
many inventions that black people. Next time if I live in Chester, video this show with Nick's Black History, I have a list of things that black folk invented, and you'd be surprised. But what I'll tell you right now, the red light. The red light was invented by a man named Morgan. Garrett Morgan, I think his name was. Garrett Morgan. I know his last name was Morgan. He invented the red light at Westinghouse, bought it, and of course they developed it as things went on. But he was the one that invented the red light.
Yeah, if we was going to really all out talking about inventions and stuff of that nature, I got, like you said, the record shows 400 or 500 people or more invented so many different things.
Of course.
You go back into the situation with slavery and bringing those folks from Africa over here against their will and what have you. But the merchants or the people who was buying these folks, they would go to the slave market, as they call it. It's like you do cows and different things and look at it. Well, they would go and look at human beings.
Of course.
And what they would do is you read up, that's why history is so important. If you read the history of it, these folks had, the merchants who were buying, had so much of sense until they would look at the record of individuals, what tribe they come, what this and that and everything else. And that's how they determine whether this particular individual would worth so much more money in the next person. They wasn't
getting the
worth
mouth
the same.
and all that type stuff.
And the thing about it is they had certain skills.
Yes.
For planting and all agriculture, all this kind of stuff. Some of them come from certain parts of the world that was expert in so many things. Mm-hmm. So when they get here, the value of them was so so much that it would cost so much more money. That's why the stuff, rice and all those there's so much different things that they were expert in planning and everything else. Mm-hmm. So that the value of these people was so much. So you black contribute to this country ever since they got here.
What you talking about? Built the White House.
And everything, that just like you said, the structure from the White House, and which was as I read, a black and white, I think 2 individuals, some architects or whatever, but one will deal with got his information from the moon and stars and all these different things. and I mean how they tie this thing in together and everything else. So geniuses and smart people.
Of course. You got smart people in every race. You got good people, bad people. It's a multiplicity thing, all of them.
But I think, we talk about this, but we owe ourselves some of the problems that we have. Right now, I wonder why we are not taking the time out to teach Black history to our kids ourselves.
Well, I just heard that on the article here, what did it say about the grandmama?
Yep, I'm telling you, we need to organize that. You can't just read it in the paper. We need to do something.
Grandmama, we need to teach. We need to teach our children.
Well, we need to do more than that, grandma. The school system needs to be teaching the kids.
Oh,
we need to be following them.
I thought they had Black history in the school books. I would hope they have more anything in other than Booker T. Washington and George Washington Carver.
Well, I can assure you that in the state of Virginia, the Virginia history was more than what you guys got here. Because when you guys start talking about the things that went on here, that's something detailed in Virginia history. That's why they got all those monuments in Richmond right now. They fight about it. That was the seat of the Confederacy for a long time.
What Wes is saying in a sense, and we talk about it also, and this is something that the general audience, because you live in this area and you live here, and that just right now you mentioned that. Let's talk a little bit about Chatham County and this area around here, and so education is one of the key things. And when we're talking about, like he said, about education, we as a whole, not just us right here on the show, but you all who are out there and listening, that we need to get involved with the system itself, the Board of Education, the system, who runs the system. It's our tax dollars. And it's a whole lot of different things that's happening right now. And we can make certain things happen if we start speaking out and demand certain things. And that's what he's talking about, Black history and everything else. Because if all those folks did so much then with less than what we got now, there's so much more that can be done. But it's up to us to push it to make sure that these things happen.
I often think what Booker T. Washington, but Frederick Douglass said. He was a great civil rights man. We all know that through the history. And he said this, and I quote him on these words. He said, "How can we make educated decisions for the future if we fail to understand our past? We got to build our future based on things that happened in our past."
Well, you know what I think what has happened really is that we as parents have forgotten to allow teachers to take over the teacher training of our children. We allow the system to do that. We as parents and grandparents have to not be afraid of teachers. You know, one thing that I realized when I was growing up, my mother was actually kind of nervous about teachers because she felt she was not educated. But I told Mom, I said, "Mother, you may not have degrees, but you have general knowledge. You have wisdom. And so we should never allow teachers or school systems to take over the real training of our kids. Any more than we should allow churches to do that either. We have to be involved and really put some emphasis in that."
The whole thing is, when I think about our people, we have become complacent.
Well, we become complacent, but
very much complacent.
We are afraid of the system. Right now, if I were to go, I remember when I was going to Johnson High to deal with the business and my own personal stuff, people were not interested in me coming over there to see what was going on. They wanted me to take their word that this was what was happening. In other words, we go to the school system now. We're going to go sit on the class. How can you go to the classroom and sit in on class? How often before they ask you out? Those are the things. We're right that many of the school teachers that we have in our school system don't even live in our community. So how do we know that? How do kids know that? So those are the sort of things that I'm talking about.
And you are so correct. You know, right now, and I don't go enough, but when you go to a school board meeting, slim, white and black. I'm not talking about just black folks, but white as well as black. Don't attend these school board meetings like they should, with all of this kind of stuff. And it's up to the people to make the changes. Don't you know that you can look, if you look at the budget for the city, look at it. And you can look at the budget for the county. You can look at the budget for the state. Mm-hmm. And when you look at the overall budget and your tax dollars, which is the most money that's allocated for different things, but when they got something like a round ball, and they got percentage on you, 10%, 15, 20, 40%, etc. Who do you think that most money goes to what? On any budget, government budget?
Administration?
No, school.
School, education.
School.
That's right. I mean, that's the state. Just look at a budget. You just have to go all downtown and look at the budget for Chatham County or the county, and you'll see that. So what I'm saying is that we are saying these things, but then we let them go free, do like anything. And that's one of the most important things. But we let them turn wide or loose and do as they please. Now, one key thing is that it is up for the people to rally and make the system work.
That's right.
Not the board, the people who elected and making all the decision and say, well, we do this because so and so. Yeah, you can demand that those things be changed. You see what I'm talking about? And these are some things that we need to, as a whole, people as a whole, need to, and you'll see some improvement. You'll see a lot of things would change. Because one thing right now, if you go on the program, you can put in a minute that you want to appear, you want to speak at the board meeting. And they're not going to deny you, they put your name on the list. And Mr. Crenshaw or Mr. Thornton or Dunham are going to be speaking, and it's already there, down. But you sit there, and what you do is a written report or whatever you got to say, you say it to the board. But that's not dialogue, and that's not discussing things and waiting for them to respond and this and that. These kind of things need to be changed. There's a lot of things that need to happen within the school system.
One of the things I was thinking about this is probably going to piss off some people, but I look at the Martin Luther King parade. Now, to me, that is a soft method of dealing with what Martin Luther King stood for. What do I mean by we get out here, we get all these parades and things, all this. What we actually should be doing is all those 300 or 400 churches that are in the parade, we need to have those people dealing with the issues about why are there so many kids going to prison for school? Why is there nobody that's making sure that these kids have food and stuff when they need it? What I'm trying to say is that we have the making of the MLK Parade Committee. We have the making of an organization that could really change things in the system. We could deal with the issues of poor housing for poor people. We could deal with mental illness for people in the court systems and everything. In other words, instead of us just having a parade every year, we ought to get all those churches together and start having research programs and see what's going on. Why, see what I'm saying? Is that we need to deal with a whole lot of things that we're not dealing with right now. It's easy for us to have a parade, but it's not easy for us to confront what's going on in the system that's not working.
You know what worries me about the whole city is the poverty rate. What are we doing? It was very devastating a day to me, when I saw this city, what they want to call it, all those men living out of holes in some area over there, President Street, like animals. They had little tents or something like that. I mean, that's really terrible. It was really devastating to watch that. But the poverty rate, I hate the word. What they word they use all the time, economic development. What is the poverty rate? I bet it has not moved not one inch since they brought that man here. 33% poverty rate.
But this is what I was trying to tell Chester about. What I was trying to explain to you guys when we was talking about the Martin Luther King parade. These are the issues that should be dealt with on the general population.
I mean, having a parade doesn't have anything to do with us not doing these things that you look at the St. Patrick. That man back there, what, the 18th century, it's still going on. But that has nothing to do, shouldn't stop doing what you're advocating.
No, what I'm saying is that we need to do what we are doing. Just having a parade is not necessary.
I agree. But it's nothing having a parade, but we need to do a lot of these other things.
Well, this is what I'm saying is that we, as all these large churches get together, we can do some things.
Of course.
So, but we're not. We individually we have limited capabilities, but we get together as a group.
We got to have good leadership, man.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm asking you right now. You want to lead something? We got something you can lead in the community. This is an organization called DART. We have to deal with just what I'm talking about. We're no longer going to be dealing with what we call soft issues. We got churches that put themselves together in an organization. How many churches do we have in Savannah? Black churches, white churches,
too many.
synagogues.
You got, I think Michael Porter said at the Hunger Club
450.
the other night. I think he said it's around about 700 or 700 and something churches.
So if we got half of those churches together and they were to deal with the issues, that's what we talk about. We talk about the homeless issue. They listen at me. How many years has the city of Savannah gotten money from the federal government to take care of the homeless issue?
Plenty of times.
Every year, right. But nobody takes care of them.
Now then also you have the mental problems. When they had the Thailands up there, dealt with these persons with mental instability. They cut the funding off. They had to close it down.
But where are they sending them now? They're sending them to jail.
Huh?
They're sending them to the jail now.
Yeah.
So now the jail is decided to take up the issues of mental health. But what if we were to get together as a group and say, we want some taxes to take care of the homeless and the mentally ill, rape crisis centers, Salvation Army food bank, all these social services that the city claims that people have to go up there and beg them for money. We need to have a tax in the city that takes care of that. We take care of a lot of things taken care of. But we can't do that as individuals.
You pass that stuff here in Douglas County to put quarter-cent sales tax for behavioral health projects on November ballot.
That's what I'm talking about. We don't have
people would do that for humanitarian cause.
Well, that's what I'm trying to point out.
She got some water. She's ringing. Sorry, piece of come on.
See the
Witness guy.
the basic thing is that project, and I agree with what you're saying, and I said I agree with what you're saying, because like we have to come together, and not only right here in Savannah, but it's happening in different areas. You see these problems, like you saying right there now. You saw that today.
That's all today.
Disgusting to me.
Wes talked about some things that he said. I see some things. You could see things every day.
Pitiful.
Let me
Basic thing.
I have to just tell you just how bad it is. I was in Walmart yesterday. One guy came up to me, grabbed me, picked me up off the ground, hugged me, said, "Oh, hey, old man, you don't realize what you did for me down here in the city." I looked at him and I said, "What's going on?" He said, "I have been clean for 3 or 4 years. I got a new car, I got a new job, all because of what you did for me down there." And so the homeless that you're seeing, that you saw today, for years I saw them every day. Those guys are veterans. They served in the World War and the Vietnam War, and they're just successful with the system. So there's plenty. The homelessness, I'm glad that, I wish more people like you would see that. But I have become sort of like, what's the word? When you become that, you don't see it anymore, you just walk past it. I've seen so much homelessness and so many problems that it doesn't strike me anymore, things I need to work on. I have to intentionally work on some things like that. And Chester will tell you that I always concerned about making sure that we don't forget those folks. Because when I said right today, I would love to see us cut out the splash tax and the e-splash tax and put a tax on to take care of all these social ills in the community, including the places where people have homelessness, affordable housing, all this sort of things.
Everybody got no better sleeping in America, sleeping under no bridge.
But think about all
in that place over there, sort of day, look like little Kids and children will play in. What about when it's absolutely cold?
Well, why do you take you down there so you go down? When I was working down there, we used to go down under the bridge.
I saw it. I don't want to go down there.
You haven't seen it yet. When you go down the bridge, a person dies. A person dies in the city. The parents come looking for them. We go down there and find their tent. And we have to go in their tent and tear everything apart and get all their personal IDs and stuff like this. And you know, I'm afraid of snakes. I live in Virginia, but I'm scared of snakes.
I
know what I'm saying is that
I pay the tax. I pay the tax, but I don't want to go down there. But you're absolutely right. We really need to look at all these social problems that we have in this community.
Well, one thing is that, like I was to the Hungry Club a couple of 3 weeks ago when they had their breakfast, and they usually have a special program or a forum and addressing issues and various things that be happening around the city in various areas and the sort of thing. And different organization or group or individual who would be a speaker address the overall people who are there, talk about a whole lot of things. And when they get through doing that particular program or what have you, they might be done talk about 5 or 10 different issues or different things that's happening that need help, or they need to do something about it. So I'll tell them the general what need to happen to solve those kind of problems is bringing this whole community together. This group over here, you don't have to stop them from what they are doing. Group over here is telling you something what they're doing. Don't have to stop none of that. But get involved as groups together.
Yeah, that's true.
And coming together and support what they're doing and this and that. This need to be taken care of. That need to be taken care of. That's a project over there dealing with the county. This is a project over here dealing with the city. This is a project over here dealing with state laws or state this and that. Come together and say, all right, we as a group, people, going to attack these things, demand certain things to happen, and that's what need to happen. If we come together with something like that, we can solve a good many of some of these problems that we're having. A lot of folks that we said we were going to talk about that did a lot of things in Savannah right here.
Like the time.
And then they are gone now, but still yet we can learn from that. That's history again. We can contribute, do some more to continue doing certain things that they did.
The lady was on TV today, was speaking very nicely about it. I call it the tent city. It was showing on the TV, very devastating to me. And then it showed some little houses being built and constructed. One of the problems is our priorities. No question about it. Like you just said, the group over here can solve this, work on this problem, work on this problem. And they had the titles here. And dealt with all of it. When I was chairman of the Board of Health up there, and we dealt with a lot of problems with people with mental instability. And what happens? The state cut off the funding. A lot of people right now need mental health.
Well, this is why I said that when I look what the group would do this. We need to reprioritize for the entire county.
Priorities.
And not let the city council, county commission, or the school board of education determine what the priorities of the community. How many years have we found out, or anybody told us that the poverty rate was too high in the city of Savannah?
Ain't doing nothing about it. The poverty rate was 30-something%. I don't know what it has been in the last 3 or 4 years.
So the question is, who is supposed to be taking care of that issue? How many schools do we have that are on the retraining list or whatever the list is? You know, they're performing badly. How many schools do we have on the performing badly list? How many times have we heard about that? After a while, we need to be telling our school board, we need to tell our county commission, we need to tell our city council, these are the priorities we want you to work on, we want you to get on with right away. Now, you wouldn't have this issue about homelessness if the city of Savannah and the county commissioners and all the people actually had that, in my opinion, as a priority. But that's not a priority to them.
That's right.
Well, just look, like you said, just recently, a couple of 3 years ago, the governor that we had, that he went all out wanted to change the school system for the state. He wanted to come up with a constitution. He wanted a constitution amendment.
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, but to change this and change that. If the overall citizens of the state of Georgia, because this was a state project, didn't speak up and didn't make demand, don't you know that this man would have had, right now, this would have passed, it would have been a constitution amendment. He had enough votes, even right here in Savannah, we have some people who represent us, who we voted with the governor for this stuff. So the same thing you just said a few minutes ago about low performing school. Well, see, they done straighten out a lot of those things because all you have to do, make adjustment here and there and do these kind of things. But we just sit idle by.
That's right.
And let these things happen. And that's what's happening every day with elected officials.
That's right.
Who you vote to put in office. And they will sit there and they will come up with any kind of rules and laws. And the people just grumble and say, they're going to do this and they're going to do that and all this kind of stuff. Look at the other day when they're talking about the fire situation with the extra money for the fire.
Oh, yeah, with the taxes. Yeah, they had that problem taxed by the fire.
And all this kind of, so the folks came out and raised a little sand, but they didn't raise enough sand because what they did, you're darn right. What they did is they stopped it here
and put it over there.
And put it over here. And we still sit standing idle by and thinking that it's gone. It ain't going nowhere because you still got to pick up and pay the taxes and this sort of thing. So these are the type of project and problem that we are having and will continue to have if these things don't change,
But you know what? My son was talking to me and he said that we are growing inner city terrorists as we go because we are not taking care of the kids. The kids are going to hold us accountable. Just like we let the kids go right from school to the prison pipeline. So these people are going to be angry with us and we're going to have all kinds of problems in the city. And it's coming, they tell them the gangs and gangs and gangs and gangs. We are not doing what we're supposed to do as citizens, as Christians. The Lord said, what does he expect of us to do but to walk straight to justice? So what I'm saying is that we have enough people in this community that we can get together as a group across racial lines, across religious lines, and we can determine some new priorities to deal with everything that we want.
Well, Thailand was a place that dealt with helping people with mental problems.
I think when I realized
that went out of existence because the state didn't refund it again.
Now think about whether we had a quarter penny tax in the county that funded that for us. The jail, we wouldn't have the sheriff concerned about how many people he locked up because of mental illness.
Well, just like when they're building that jail, there were $100 million. I remember we discussed it on the show. $100 million. They couldn't even take $10 million and put training on some of these guys because everybody in the jail are not hardcore criminals. I want you to know most of those are drug cases, not violent criminals. Train these people for jobs.
But that's what I'm saying.
But they didn't want to take 10 million. That wasn't but 10% of it.
But look what I'm trying to say. So here you, Chester, and I, and 4 or 5 other people from different denominations, different races, we all get together. We tell the sheriff and the county, this is what the priority is going to be for the jail. That's our responsibility as citizens. We don't have to sit around and have them determine what the priorities are. We need to be able to tell the city, you got homeless issues, you getting money from the federal government, take care of them, then take care of it. We should make it as good. Every year, I feel very sorry to see people standing before the county commission, the city council begging them to please fund the program that we should be taking care of. Just like you're talking about those homeless people, we shouldn't have to go down there and beg them for the money to take care of homelessness. They get money from the federal government, I bet they do.
See, that's political education, and that's what we need to talk about a great deal more. And when I said we, I'm talking about we trying to give the general audience, information on what needs to happen. Because number one, they need to study government. They need to understand what responsibility the city have where you live, what their obligation is, city government, because it's your tax dollars. It ain't
That's
the city,
right.
all of them people there. They're just sitting up there minding the money or what have you, making decisions. So what you need to do is, your priority should be to understand the government and how it works. And then, like I said, form organization, get people together on town hall meetings and stuff like that, and make demands on certain things. You do the same thing with the county, and you do the same thing with the state, and you do the same thing with the Board of Education. All of these things, it falls under something. Like I heard y'all saying a few minutes ago, the sheriff. The sheriff is under somebody, because there's money going there, for whatever. But you find those things out and make demands and do those things. You see some changes.
Yeah.
And that's what have to
We
happen.
should be in the business of decreasing incarceration, not increasing it.
Oh, definitely so.
So they got mentioned about the $10 million. They could have taken some of that money for job training.
Well, see, that's
But
another
locking
thing.
people up.
That's another thing that suggestion should be made, and that's a state project. Plus, county.
Yeah.
Well, the city too, but definitely county and a state project, and these kind of things that make demand. Individual people will listen when you start doing something and making demand with them, because a lot of them just sit down there and stick the chest out or something like that and do much of nothing. And all of this kind of stuff, and time is out for that kind of stuff.
What do you think would happen if a group of us would go down to city council and the county commission and board of education and suggest that they sunset Sprosh and East Sprosh, and that we can do, then we take some money and start taking care of the social issues in the county? What do you think would happen? You have all kinds of crap flying around, because people don't want you whenever you start spending the money and telling people how to spend the money, then you start having a real effect. And all you got to do is have programs that have a real effect one time, and the citizens will be all over the place. But we can do that, but I can't do it by myself. You can't do it by yourself. All of these people in the community, all these blacks and whites who see these problems, they need to get together, and it can't be done. That's what I'm telling you about the penny tax.
Yeah, that's interesting now about the penny tax.
Well, these are things that's happening now. I don't want to get away from some of the things one of the main ones told me that you wanted to talk about some people who had contributed, since we are still dealing with a little bit of black history here in Savannah. And so let's look at the situation with people who have contributed and who have died. And let's say, for instance, either one of y'all can start out, or either I can start out about individual, and then go from there. Let's talk about some things that
I like to start talking about the person in Savannah we talk about now.
this is what I'm talking about.
Okay. I like to start with talking about Mr. W. Law.
All right then.
The man who gave himself for his whole community. A lot of folk don't know anything like what went on down with the boycott down on Broughton Street. A lot of people got involved in it. Jose Williams.
Talking to the youth. This is again talking to the youth. And
well, we had to go through. They don't know. I was one of the ones that was sitting in. First time Baptist Church was like the headquarters downtown. Reverend Tim was preaching about a couple Sundays ago. And we would go down and rest a while, eat lunch or something, then we'd go back down and we'd sit in Crest. I sat in Crest, and the boycott was very successful. I can remember when the students got arrested in Levy's department store, the meeting was over that Sunday over at the church on the east side over there. What Sim goes over there on East Broad Street. The Methodist Church. But anyway, Dr. Jordan, Carl Rackett Jordan,
Let me cut you off a minute. Let's say you were talking about Mr. Law, W.W. Law.
You want to come back into him, the boycott.
Well, yeah, I understand, but I'm just saying, there's a lot of youth out there that don't even just know what you're talking about when you're talking about law and
that's true.
That. So, in a neat way, kind of fix it up and said, who was W.W. Law?
W.W. Law.
What he contributed, like you talking to youth and younger folks, the older ones would know, but some of the other ones.
But I put it this way: every time I talk about civil rights, if you were born after 1960, you don't have virtually you don't know anything what went on here.
Right.
You don't know anything what went on.
Right. So,
but Mr. Law was a mailman. He was a postman.
All righty.
He was a scout leader. He was a man that was deeply involved with the NAACP.
Thank you. All right.
He was a mailman. I remember because of his leadership, he used to respond on writings on things happening. Like he was just talking about the homeless, for instance. He would write articles in the paper of the challenging the city for not doing its responsibility. Just give an example. And I remember the white people really hated that man. They really did. And then Mr. Law.
Well, didn't he have a position?
He was he was the president of the NAACP chapter. He took over after Dr. Gilbert. He became president of the local NAACP. And eventually they hated him because of his work, his leadership, speaking out and all of that. And Dr. Gilbert's wife, Mrs. Gilbert, she lives in New York now. I talked to her very recently. She's 95 years old now, I think it is. And she's writing a book about her husband, by Dr. Gilbert. And she was asking me the other day when I checked to see what they were supposed to do the third floor in the museum down in his honor. We haven't got to that yet, but Mr. Law was so outstanding. He was hated, and he was eventually fired by the post office for some discretionary reason, where he was relieving himself or something. Some lady saw him. The man was very discreet in what he was doing. It was the hate they had for the man. So he was fired, and the big guns of the NAACP, Walter White and Roy Wilkins, they went to President Kennedy. And here's what was disgusting. The man who was the postmaster general didn't know anything about Mr. Law other than what somebody told him or he read. He makes this statement, I wouldn't have him, he couldn't bring mail to my house. He ought to be fired. I would never have him bring mail to my house. Then he didn't even know who the man was. But I can tell you this, President Kennedy put Mr. Law back to work on his job and reprimanded the man who was the general postmaster general, reprimanded him and had him to apologize to Mr. Law. And Mr. Law was a great leader in this community. When I think about Jose Williams, who eventually...
Now, let me cut you off for 1 second. And if Mr. Law, like you said, he was hated and a lot of other kind of things, why do you think that he was hated like that?
Because they could unite the people. Now, I got to say this about the 60s, during the boycott. It first was initiated for the church on East Broad Street, when I started mentioning by Mr. Jordan. Carl Rackett Jordan, he was a physician. He went to all the seminars all over the country. and he was disbanded from the Memorial Hospital for some assault, allegedly, on some white lady, a nurse or something like that. But I think the bottom line was he wouldn't use the library. Doctor couldn't even use the library in the hospital. That racism and segregation was something, man. And people these young people today don't even know. Well, we had to do it. Let me just say this. He called for the black folk in Savannah to open up a savings and loans association, like the people did in Atlanta with that big bank. That's why Atlanta, during them segregated days, these black folk had to find houses and everything because they were refinancing from this bank. He wanted to Savings and Loan Association. I don't know the name of it, it existed in Atlanta today. So everybody was enthusiastic about that because you could buy shares to establish this Savings and Loan Association. But certain people killed that. They didn't want that to happen. They didn't want that to happen, and it didn't become a reality. And that Sunday, if you did not get to the church, they're going to tell you the next Sunday where the mass meeting will be. All the meetings started at 4 o'clock. If you did not get to the church at 4 o'clock, you would have to stand up. Yeah. All the churches was filled to capacity. First Time Baptist over 1,600 people, our church.
What's going on?
And we couldn't find a seat in the church that Sunday when the meeting was at First Time Baptist Church. And the boycott went on for about 18 months.
I'm coming back to West because we got to move forward because we got some other things we're going to get through.
What you want to talk about?
And but we got to move fast. I'm talking even Chinese. My opinion about the law, which I knew him, one reason why he was hated for a great deal of things because he was a good, strong leader.
Yeah,
pushing things and making things happen.
Exactly.
And when that happened like that, that's when you get individual. Now, if it's just a do-nothing person and all this kind of stuff, the system, they don't be able to protect you. But that's the reason why.
Yes, man.
Since you're from Savannah, tell me what Savannah State had to do with the city in the time. What was going on with Savannah State? What was going on with Savannah State? How was it involved with Black history here in the city?
That's what he actually.
No, I don't think Savannah State was really involved in the city. And they had something they went on with the president out there and Bobby Hill, but that had nothing to do with the downtown boycott. The biggest boycott was they were not giving it to people decency.
Okay, but this is my issue. We have a black college here in the town. I want to understand what role did they play in the
Say that again now?
We have a black college here in the city. What role did they play in the
they didn't get involved in no civil rights. No sit-ins or demonstrations like that. No, they didn't do that. No. Now you might have had some students going to the school.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. Students should be involved.
But he said that the college involved in it.
Well, what reason I asked that we were watching the Black History Week this past week, and it had a show showing all the black colleges that were involved in the civil rights movement. You know, Jackson State.
But Savannah State did not take the leadership. I saw that too. Like at Fisk University, all those students were doing the sit-ins and all that.
So my question is, who was leading at that time? Who was leading Savannah State at that time?
Oh, that was Dr. Payne. President Payne was leading them during that time.
Because I have to say, my mother-in-law and I, she worked there for a long time.
But the school itself did not do like you saw on the television, like the students at Fisk University, students at Morehouse College, or the students they did that. But I'm not saying you didn't have persons that went to school was involved in the cities, with marches and everything. But the big leaders of the movement was the law. Dr. Jordan. Dr. Jordan was the one to give the first NAACP office. It was right there on Henry and West 4th Street over Hard Shoe Shop. That same building down there right now was the first NAACP office. He paid 2 months rent, put desks and everything in there. That was the first office for the NAACP had right there.
Since we're talking about the NAACP and during that period of time, Mr. Law leadership and this and that, it's and I know you probably know her well. It's a lady during that period of time, a great educator and other kind of things here in Savannah. And her name is in the record book and so many other things that she done. And that's Miss Ethel Garrison. Can you tell me, the viewing audience, a little bit about Miss Garrison?
Miss Garrison was.
I want to say a few things about her, but
she was a fine leader. She was secretary of the NAACP for many years. She was a secretary.
Right.
And she worked down at Union Hall.
I can tell you about
Yeah, you can talk about that aspect of her. But she was a great leader, and she served on the board, and finally she eventually got on the board of education, where I was focused at doing the integration of schools. She went around to the schools and had the students understand that that's the law of the land. The integration of school, those dual schools never should have been in the first place. No dual schools. People could come from other countries and go to the schools. That would lead to the Brown versus Board of Education. And Mr. Reverend Holmes had a little girl 8 years old. She had to walk 5, 6, 7, 8 blocks in first grade. And the school just right around the corner where she lived. He took his little daughter to the school. He couldn't accept her in there. She couldn't come to that school.
Let me say something about Miss Garrison. Because
she was a great leader.
She was an individual who, listening to me now, who knew Miss Garrison, know that she was a great leader and what she did for the school system here in Savannah.
Yeah.
And those individuals who didn't know about her, they need to read up a little bit about it, especially a lot of kids now in school and what have you, because for the educational system, she was one of those individuals who spoke out and did so much. She was just not the average individual, and she worked under the leadership of Mr. Law. She was the secretary with the NAACP when Mr. Law was president.
Yeah.
And then she worked with the union, the ILA, with us for a long period of time. So that's when I knew her. I knew her well. But she was an outstanding person, and we wanted to give recognition to those individuals who have served and did so much and helped shaping the system now, from then to now. And I just wanted to mention that about Ms. Garrison.
And Jose Williams was another great leader. Jose Williams, because eventually he left. He used to they put him in jail because he led marches out right in there at night. Jose Williams did.
Yes, I didn't know.
You remember that? And
Jose as well, but you all know him. I was in another area at that time. I was in Brunswick.
They tried their best. He was working for the U.S. Department of Agriculture as a chemist.
Yeah, right.
He lived in Thunderbolt. And sure you do have good.
Reverend Jose Williams.
You do have really for wonderful, wonderful, good white people. He had a friend that he worked with. And they would try to team up on him, or they would try to catch him with all his tests not being done. He was a chemist. And his friend called him. He told me about it. His friend called him and told him what they were doing. They're bringing some inspectors down, and they want to make sure that catch him off guard with his work is not up to par with all this testing, whatever he was working on. And he met Jose at a certain place. He didn't say where it was, and told him and put his boots on, so to speak. What Jose did, he stayed late after work, time, and when that man came down from the inspecting, they could find nothing to criticize him about his work, because this young man had told him what they were doing, they were trying to do to him, so they could fire him because of his work with the NAACP. I look at James Cawthorn. Nobody don't talk about him. He did a lot in the community. Let me show you now. He was president of Political Advisory Council. He was in the real estate business, and he was trying to build some houses. And because of his work, you know what they did to him? Shut off funding where he couldn't borrow money to do his house, the structure of his houses. That's how they punished him. But nobody ever talks about him. And he wouldn't mind. We wouldn't have no blacks on no board. And when the first person got on the board was the library board, and the late Miss Addie Bias. She was a strong, outstanding leader. She was a school teacher out there in West Savannah, Woodville. But she didn't let that worry her because she remembered on NAACP. And she worked 10 meetings, and she wasn't scared to speak up either.
I was involved in during that period of time, doing some civil rights stuff in Brunswick, Georgia, Deer and Brunswick.
Yeah.
And I used to read up on the Klangs and heard them talk about the Klangs in different places, Alabama, all over the place. And I had the witness on my way from Brunswick one afternoon going back I was living in Deering, and I was on my way back home. And when I got to a certain location at a red light, busy section, they stopped me. I was in a convertible car, me and another friend of mine, and they stopped me at the light, and they started talking all kinds of stuff. And they said, well, you came to my car and said, and had guns and all kind of stuff, and said, well, we blocking up this, but you ain't going home today or no, nothing else. And especially with this car you got here, you're not going home. We blocking things off. So I just turned around and went back to a friend of mine's house who I knew he had all kind of ammunition and guns and what have you, because I didn't believe in guns and all that.
Violence.
Yeah, so I went in the house and he said, what you need? And he had guns all over the place. So I looked over there, I said, give me that double-barrel sawed-off shotgun. He had a double-barrel sawed-off shotgun, and I got that. I told my little friend who was riding with me, I said, we going home. So if you got any nerve, you better get it ready. And when I got back to the light, the Clangs still were there. They were white rolled and everything else, late in the afternoon. And I pulled up there, and they came over there and said, boy, nigga, they called me a nigga or something. So didn't I tell you you're not going back? And I rise above that seat with that sawed-off shotgun, and the top was down, stuff like this. And I said,
It took off.
I said, open up and let me come through, buddy. I look around, they were doing like
Scatter.
That's right. And I came on home. That was my witness with the Clang.
But let me tell you,
During that time.
before we leave here, that you cannot think about the NAACP without several strong, outstanding ministers in this community that work with Mr. Law. Namely, three of them I could think of very, very well. One of them was Reverend Jadon. But he was pastor of St. Philip Monumental there on Park Avenue, Duffy. Another one was Bishop Scott, and another one was Reverend Quarterman, Second Avenue Baptist Church, and Reverend Patterson, who was a pastor of Butler Presbyterian Church. Those were strong ministers that worked with Mr. Law. And I'll never forget about Judge Gadsden. He was the attorney, Judge Gadsden, who eventually became first African-American Superior Court judge.
Yeah.
He was very instrumental with the Political Advisory Council.
He was such a nice individual.
Smart man, too.
Right.
Yeah.
So who are the strong ministers in the community? Who are the strong ministers in the community today?
Today? That's right. Wes, go ahead and name some ministers now. He said, let's ask a question. So.
Well, I'm going to tell you who my strong minister today, too, as far as I'm concerned, and that was the late Reverend Benny Mitchell.
Yep.
And Reverend Smalls. Can't nobody say. Smalls to go down that board and tell them what time it was.
Smalls at Lidway?
Right, Lidway Baptist Church, Reverend Smalls. He spoke out. He would go to that board and take a stand. Can't understand. You know what I can't stand about a lot of the ministers? They are taken care of by the membership of the church.
Yep.
They're not obligated to anybody. So why are you afraid to speak out? I don't get that.
Well, they don't speak out because the members don't want them to speak out.
Who?
The members do not want them to speak out.
I don't think that is.
Look at this.
I never heard nothing like the members of Westfield. They just
No, look. Ministers in this community, they live at the will of their membership.
Oh, no.
Yes, indeed. I guarantee you, yes, some of them.
No, I have never heard no minister membership they want nobody to speak out. They don't speak out and get around no guts.
That's right. I tell them all the time when I see them.
I'm telling you about these ministers took a stand with Mr. Law. Those ministers were strong.
No,
the Reverend Scott Scale, what's wrong with me?
I'm not talking about those guys. I'm talking about the ones that...
Well, I don't... And the ministers today make more money. I don't know, man.
They carrying our money down to the white banks, and they carry... Well, we let it go.
I'm just saying about the past, the ministers in the past, who are very strong and outstanding. I'm not saying they're not involved with certain things, but I'm talking about ministers. You got to give Benny Mitchell credit. he would speak out, and Leonard Smalls. The two men would speak out.
And I'm the only two that you could.
Don't force it. Don't force it.
I ain't think about that. I ain't reading Chester. But a lot of them, number things are organizations and stuff like that for the good of the community. But I mean, we got so many problems that need to be addressed with leadership, and they're just not doing it.
Okay, we're gonna kind of wrap things up, and again, I appreciate you being on with us.
Yeah, I appreciate
Got a
being
lot
here
of
tonight.
knowledge
I'm
and stuff
hurrying.
to give to the overall public, and we definitely will be having you back.
I enjoyed it.
Wes, you want to say anything before we part?
No, I just want to let people know that at some point in time, perhaps we can get together and start talking about how we form an organization that hold our elected officials and groups that what they're supposed to get done in the county and the city. In other words, we need somebody that's going to kind of.
Well, we're working on some things now, and I'm making sure through the umbrella of the A. Philip Randolph Institute that we can put a lot of things together and get other organization working with us.
If I close, let me just say this, and I'm here in the studio at your home, but we got to give you credit. You really do take a lot of stands on issues. I remember when dealing with crime, when you had all the judges together, trying to down at the visitor center one Saturday, trying to decide what some of the things we could do to make things better for our young people. I got to admire you for that, Chester. You've already been a strong man in this community, speaking out on issues, taking a stand on issues, having this radio program at your own expense to involve the community. And we need to get more involved in our community to make things better.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're talking about voters registration, and you're going on, and I'm going to give you your flowers while you live it.
Okay, thank you very much. So you have been watching the Dunham Report, where you, the community, come first, keeping a focus on the future. So subscribe to us on our channel. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram. See you on the next show. Good night.